Yasmin. Very good evening to everyone from Chennai Photo Biennale. We hope you're keeping safe. This is our fourth tour, and it's been exciting. Until now, we've had some great tours of various shows of the Biennale for actual photography with some artists and some tour guides and curators. Just to give you a quick introduction in case if you are tuning in for the first time, the Chennai Photo Biennale CPB is a public arts photography festival that happens every 2 years in the city of Chennai in southern India. We are also a foundation that runs an education program throughout the year. You can check out more about us on our website, which is chennaifotobiennale.com, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We had the fantastic opportunity of visiting the Biennale for Actual Photography in February for their launch as part of the Goethe Institute South Asian Photography Visitors Program, where 17 of us from South Asia had gone to meet and everyone and see the shows. It was fantastic. And sadly, because of the pandemic, the shows had to be closed down. But the good thing is that all the shows are online on their website, and you can definitely check them out. But we thought that a greater way to get everybody to engage is to have these slightly more conversational curated tours, which would be a little more interesting. So here we are today. I would like to inform you that today's session is being recorded, but neither your chats and nor the attendees will get recorded, only the panelists will get recorded. And now over to Yasmin, who I would like to welcome. She is the Managing Director of the Biennale for Actual Photography. Welcome, Yasmin. Please take us through today's wonderful tour.
Yes, thank you so much, Shuchi Kapoor. We are very happy to have you here. So welcome very much to our tour. And I welcome Marie Bach, who is an educator from the Kunstverein Ludwigshafen. Hi, Marie. And then we have Mark Lewis here, an artist of this show, and we are very happy that we can also talk to him. So welcome, Mark. Hi. And the Biennale für aktuelle Fotografie is curated by David Company. He's a British curator, and it's called The Lives and Loves of Images. And it's basically about the migration of images and the question how images become iconic, how they influence new images, and especially today in the show in the Kunstverein Ludwigshafen, All Artist Photography. It's about the question whether photography is the basis for art consuming, so to say. And we will see so many different positions and many different questions concerning this. And I'm very happy that Marie is here to start this tour and start the conversation with the artist, with Shuchi and with me. And yeah, welcome again.
So hello everybody. I welcome you to the foyer of the Kunstverein Ludwigshafen. You can see outside the building. So this is just before we enter the exhibition space, and we can see the introduction text to the exhibition, to all the Biennale shows curated by David Company. And before we enter, I would like to refer to the title, which we see here, All Art is Photography, which gives us the theme of our exhibition inside. And maybe we can start about questioning this title. What do we expect when we read this title, or does it sound familiar to us? And maybe Mark, you as an artist and photographer, you have like a few words. How would you understand this title, or what do you think when somebody tells you, like affirms all art is photography?
Well, I imagine that I don't know the inside story. Like David didn't discuss it with me, but I imagine that, nor have I read the text, but I imagine it is a kind of an acknowledgement of the circulation of art and the circulation of its reproduction, especially now, right? I mean, this is a perfect example that we're looking at this exhibition through a series of stitched together photographs. So I'm guessing that's what it means. All art is photography is that at some level its currency, its value, its meaning and its distribution is overdetermined by photography. I actually don't think it's right. I mean, I don't think all art is photography, but I understand that it's a rhetorical title more than anything else.
Yeah, at first, when I also read the title, I often also confounded it. I also thought, oh, art, photography is art. That's also like an affirmation you would often also read or hear or maybe think over. Is it really right? Is all photography art? So you can also turn it one or the other way around.
Yeah, no, that's a smart point. I mean, you're absolutely right.
So maybe we just enter and start the tour. So we see it's just quite a small exhibition space when we look here around, and we see it's very dark. All the windows have been shut down and the light is very dimly lit. And the reason is because we have two large sized projections in the space. Therefore, the light level needed to be very, very low. And so the first picture we confront really when we enter is this very large sized picture. You can already see the dimensions of the wall. When I scroll over it, you see it is 150 centimeters high. So it's almost like the same size of you as a visitor when you really enter the real space. I'll just zoom in a little bit more. So you can see it. It's a photograph by Paulo called El Museo. And I will just start a bit by zooming in further in order to show you all the details. Maybe we start at the upper side. So you can see it's, as the title also suggests, it's like a museum space. So we are like in a mise en abîme. We are now entering an exhibition space, and the first thing we see is a photograph of an exhibition space. But it is an exhibition space which is rather old-fashioned, we can guess, since all the paintings, they are hanging like very closely together, side by side, according to the so-called St. Petersburg hanging. So it's like an old-fashioned traditional gallery. And then when you pursue your look, you see, oh, the floor there has been something going on. It has collapsed. Like maybe we could think, oh, there was a bomb which exploded, or was there maybe some event which happened here? So we could think, oh, it's a documentary photograph, and we see also when we look at the edges, we see they are like torn, like a very old vintage photograph look. So yeah, we ask ourselves, well, was this maybe taken after the war? And maybe we could be glad that, oh wow, the paintings, they have survived. So we could be glad about that. But so that's my first view of the picture. And maybe Yasmin, would you agree with my description of what I found there? Or would you also agree that it is a documentary, it could be a documentary photograph dating back?
If we look closer, and if we suggest that it's a bomb falling in, it's not possible because there's still the ceiling, and the bomb can't come from below. So you have hints already in this photograph that it's a collage. When you go to this little point right on the right, there's a reconstructional thing in the broken floor. So you really don't know what it is, but you know, okay, there's something wrong. So it's not a documentary, but it's a collage. And but it really plays with the idea of what do we expect? Is a museum a holy room, or could it be destroyed? And what exactly is going on here? So it's apocalyptic, but it's also, you already know, okay, no, it's also a game. It's a game of things that you expect from a museum and what you not expect. So this is clearly something that you can
There's
say.
also a picture installed in the hole there too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that gives the game away, right? There's a picture installed in the hole.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a picture installed in the hole, which right away gives the game away.
Yeah.
Like,
You mean this one?
why would a picture be installed in a bomb hole? You know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you really look closely to this, you feel, okay, that's an artistic work. You know that there's something wrong, and that your first glance on it just gives you the wrong direction, which is really something which fits so well to the lives and loves of images, to the whole concept in general, because David is really interested in our mixed feelings we have towards photography. On the one hand, we really love photography and we feel this deep connection and affection. And on the other hand, you are skeptical. You know, okay, something is wrong. It could be manipulated, or it could manipulate us. So this work is really nice if you enter and you have all these questions like, is all art photography? Is photography art? And our feelings towards photography.
Thank you, Yasmin. Yes, I think you really nicely explained this. First, this dystopical feeling we get when we see the picture, that we think it's a moment of destruction. But also, as you noticed, Mark, it's like, yeah, what immediately catches our eye is this small hole here, which maybe also seems almost like a rabbit hole, like Alice in Wonderland. And it's somehow, it's like a hint that maybe also after this destructive space, maybe there is something new which emerges on the backside. And maybe when we read it also as the space where we find ourselves in, it's the museum space, so which really represents symbolically all our knowledge and our cultural heritage. But still, it's an old-fashioned space, so maybe it's like a hint whether maybe all these traditional concepts, maybe they also need to be changed from time to time. And maybe like the power of destruction or of a disaster is also a first way maybe to accept, to make some changes. And I think we are very well aware that in our current times, with the coronavirus spreading over and changing all our everyday life, we also often find ourselves confronted to this change of the concept of the world where we live in, and maybe we need to change some concepts, which we, until now, we thought they would be valid, but maybe they are no longer anymore. So I would suggest we really enter this rabbit hole now, and we go on the opposite side of this wall. So when we just enter the space and we turn around here, and then we get to see the video work by Mark Lewis, who is also with us here today. And so first, I will show it like this. So you really see it's a video projection which covers the whole exhibition wall. So you really, it seems like floating in the space. You don't see any edges anymore of the walls of the where it is projected onto. And it is now not. It is not going now. I just go out again and in again. Because it's a video which lasts for about 10 minutes. And it has no sound, so it's really only the visual imagery you can look at. And I would invite you to really get immersed in this atmosphere. And maybe you can also imagine yourself standing in this exhibition space with this full-sized projection screen in front of you.
You projected it at 4K, didn't you? I think, didn't you, at full 4K, didn't you?
Yes, yes, 4K projector.
Yeah. So the detail must be pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. And it's very slowly, smoothly floating through the...
Except it's very hard with to play inside this.
Usually it worked quite well, but...
Probably you have a lot of people using your Wi-Fi or something at this point. Sometimes I find it works really well, Zoom, and sometimes I find it doesn't. I don't know what the... That looks better. There you go.
Maybe I'll stand right from...
Yeah, if you go too close, it looks a bit shitty.
And probably when you look at these moving images, you imagine yourself what is it what we get to see, and you put yourself questions, what are we looking at? Is it what could it be? And we also have this direct relation now with the first artwork we saw by Pablo Canoves, which was called El Museo, and this video installation is also called Museum. And
yeah,
we have quite a similar feeling also. So maybe like Shushi, maybe have you seen the installation also in Ludwigshafen?
We had, yes, but very briefly.
Yeah.
Because there were so many of us and we were, running from one place to another. So very briefly.
And maybe you remember a bit of the feeling you got.
I remember the feeling.
What
yes.
the first thoughts you had when you did not knew what were about to be seeing, and maybe you can just remind them us of that.
Sure. I think what was quite interesting for us to see is exactly what you said. It was a free-floating sort of a silent video in the middle of this big space, and the fact that it had something to do with photography as well, but in a very silent, in a way, and the way photography is looking at art, almost the feeling is quite dystopian in a sense for me, because of the look and feel of what has been presented to you. Yeah, I think I would like for Mark to say something more because that was just a feeling, the first feeling that had occurred to me when I saw this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Mark, what can you maybe introduce us to your video? What we are seeing here, or how have you shot this film, or what was your main interest?
Sure.
Your main interest when you made the film?
Well, it's kind of an accident. Like most of the things I do end up being relatively accidental. Basically, I've done quite a lot of work in Sao Paulo, made quite a few films there. Again, that's kind of accidental that happened. I was invited to be in the 2014 Sao Paulo Biennale, and went over there, made some films, and made other films, and had other projects that I was doing there. And I had made a film. This is the Museum of Modern Art in Sao Paulo, a famous building designed by the Italian-Brazilian architect Lino Barbardi in the 1960s, I guess. And she had a very famous installation, which I think you've got pictures of, where she installed the paintings on glass. There's the building outside, and here's the famous installation. This is the original installation when the gallery first opened, and it's an extraordinary collection of European classical art, 16th, 17th, 18th, and some 19th century. And all the, there's, you know, some really great works there, Chardin, Rubens, Rembrandt, so on and so forth. You know, a typical collection, but actually a very good one as well. Strange in a country which is, you know, did not have that tradition, but a country that is more than half African, Brazilian, and so on and so forth. But notwithstanding all those complications, this is one of the most extraordinary installations of art in the world. And when it was taken down, I think in the late 90s, I think it was removed. Basically, you can see the paintings are installed on glass panels, so you can go around them, and on the back of the panel, you see all you can see the titles and the shipping instructions and the, you know, all the different bits and pieces of information. So the paintings are like objects in the room. They're three-dimensional. There you are. You can see titles. You can see inscriptions on the back of the wood. There'll be handwriting and so on. You know, like a history of, like a kind of unintentional history of that work of art. Anyway, I made a film in that space when it had been destroyed, and it became a sort of classical museum space. And then when I went back to Sao Paulo in 2018, hold on, let me shut the door. I can hear my family. Oh, sorry. In 2018, they had put this installation back. The new team at Mass Bay had reinstalled it, and now you're seeing the recent reinstallation. So it's exactly the way Bobardi had designed it. I thought it's a very cinematic experience going into it, because as much one second, just one second. Janice and Oak.
So I will just show you a bit around here in the exhibition display, how it is installed today in Sao Paulo.
And it's a very cinematic experience. Sorry, my son was just being kind of loud in the background. As you walk through the space, people emerge, people disappear, it's a very volumetric, three-dimensional experience in a way that no other museum in the world. It's the most spectacular museum experience you could ever have. I don't know if it's ideal for looking at works of art, because you constantly get distracted by this cinematic experience of the space. So I thought, well, it's a movie. So I decided that I would like to, I'd already worked with 3D modeling. So I made about, I can't remember how many pictures, 600 high-res photographs of every detail of the space. And I thought, okay, I'm going to put it together and make a three-dimensional film, and I'll move around and do some kind of movie. I hadn't yet come up with any idea. So we put all the images into, sorry, this is very long-winded, I'm sorry. Put all the images into the software, and then something went wrong with the software. And what you see is a very early stages, something like this appeared, where all the images started to sort of be liquefied and incorporate other elements in the room and so on and so forth. And then I was looking on Google Earth, or Google Fly, when you fly around the cities. And I noticed that it was very similar to bits of the city which hadn't been rendered properly. So I don't know if you go onto any Google Fly software for New York or Sao Paulo or London or Paris, you'll see the edges of the building look a little bit like this. They have this kind of deterioration effect. And that's because they haven't been corrected. They correct almost everything, but they don't have enough information. So I thought, well, this is in a way is a kind of degree zero of this 3D animation software. It's like, it's an interesting result. And so then we decided to go with it. And so what you see is basically the software gone wrong, which I decided was interesting, I hope.
And right from the start, I don't know if I quite understood, it was not a commissioned film, or it was a commissioned film, or it was your choice to document it for yourself?
I just did it for myself. I mean, I do that, like some films are commissioned. Most of my films I just do for myself. And I mean, I've had a few commissions, but mostly I do them for myself. Yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that the space was interesting, and I knew that the idea of this kind of classical this very, very strange installation of very classical work. And now I think, when I look at it now, and this is sort of ex post facto, I think about it as maybe like it's the end of the world, civilization is extinct, floating somewhere out in the universe is all these, because I've done 2 or 3 other works too. I did one of the Bauhaus actually in Germany, that somewhere out in the universe are these memories of the sort of high modern history, the finest moments of our history, just sort of floating around, but with no one left to see it, because we're kind of the human race is extinct. But these things have lasted in some way, and there you go. They're out there, as they may well be one day.
And when you came to the shooting of the film, how much did you plan in advance? You planned every step, every way the robot taking the photographs would go, or was there also room for?
I took the photographs. It's just me walking around the space,
okay.
With a tripod, and I just basically I tried to detail with high resolution images. I've done this a lot with my so-called normal films. I've used this software in order to do things that I can't do in real life, like make things happen that you can't make happen. So I've used the technology of 3D animation and photo mapping and all the software and image making software that allows you to do 3D work. I've used it a lot, but I've always used it invisibly, so you never know that I did it. It's just a way to make the film better or more perfect, or to add realism or whatever. So this is the first time I did it in order to show off the fact that it's not real, if you see what I mean. It's clearly this space doesn't exist. The place that you see in this film doesn't exist in the real world. It's obviously a manipulation. Whereas before, I've always used the software to enhance the real, to make the real look more real. And so I knew how to use the software. I knew how to build it. But I didn't know that it was going to go wrong. But it was when it went wrong that I decided that actually that was interesting. And then we kind of decided to go with that. And then all the moves after that were premised on the idea that it would go wrong. So I did it a number of times, like I rendered it many, many different times until I felt that we had the right feel. But the actual effect is not of my design. It's a pure accident. I didn't do something right. I screwed up.
And was it easy to accept then how it turned out, or to accept the film as it?
As soon as I saw it, I knew I wanted it. As soon as I saw it, like within a second. In fact, I was really worried it was so boring, because Google Museum had already done it. They'd already done the movie I was making. So I thought, why am I doing this? This already exists in the real world, and probably a lot better than I can do it. But I didn't know that until so I suspected it. And then when I saw the first render, which looked a little bit like this, not the same, within a second, I knew that I wanted to do it. It was like, oh my God, this is unexpected. And suddenly it's breathed life into it and made it something new, which I could never have imagined before I started working on it. But I always think that's sort of like 90% of my work. It's the accident that saves me from the banality of my ideas. It's like, I'm sure that's for most artists, that's true, right? Artists have great ideas, but they're really banal in the end. And then the accident comes in and saves you from your original intention. So I'm always grateful.
I found it interesting also how you said that that you have not meant to make a documentary film, but that this is now documentary. Because also my first thought was it if it was a commissioned film, And then I thought, well, maybe is this, I asked the question whether this film now, is it a documentary film about the exhibition space, the display by Lina Bobardi, which was very radical at 1968 when it was installed.
It still is, right?
And
still is.
It's still, yeah, it still is, because
like
there
you go there
no
now. You go there now, it's like breathtaking.
other,
I don't know if you've been there, but anybody who goes there, just, it takes their breath away.
and then I imagined also what is the difference now? What would it have been if we see now this Google view where we can just take our 360-degree tour, and what is the difference with your film? And then I thought, but maybe when the aim was to document this kind of display, I think that probably your film is much better, the better result which came from such an aim, if we call it like that. Because
yeah, I wanted to depict the cinematic effect of the installation. I wasn't, or document as you're putting it, I think more of depiction, but I wanted to document the cinematic effect of the space. That in a way, if David's show is all photography, all art is photography, I would say that all you could say all contemporary urbanity, the modern, is cinematic. I mean, it's clear that like if you think from the 18th century onwards, so like well, actually even earlier, from the 17th century, if you think of someone like Borromini, or, through Chardin, through, everything is cinematic avant la lettre. It's all about the way in which images are transformed through movement, through the spatial movement of the spectator through a building. It's a kind of reverse, Walter Benjamin calls it like a reverse cinema. And that this is a kind of experience of the world, is a cinematic experience. And we can't look at the world now without this knowledge of the cinema. It's like it's ingrained in our heads. It's part of our unconscious. It's everything we do is cinematic in a way. So the moving images, even in this extremely frozen moment of the Bobardi exhibition of all these great classical works, so many of them are about movement in themselves, or try to depict movement, try to depict time. But the way she installed it was to guarantee that the primary effect of that exhibition would be cinematic in some way. And that is that, the movement of bodies through the space, the transparency, the blocking, everything that's, even the terms are cinematic, to block, to reveal. All these things are happening in that space all the time. And I wanted to make a movie about that effect. And in a way, I made a movie about something else. It turned out to be slightly different, but the liquefaction of representation. But that's, in a way, I don't really understand, actually. To be absolutely honest, I still don't quite understand the work. It's still a kind of even when I watch it now, it's still a kind of mystery to me. I still haven't got a full sense of what I've done, if you see what I mean.
I also thought that because when I read then that Lina Bobardi's radical display, I show it once again, it was installed in 1968, then it was taken down at 1996, I think. And then 20 years later, 2015, the museum decided to reinstall it because they noticed that it was really an avant-garde display, and they wanted to keep it shown, but still it is not really the same installation, because they changed also actually one very fundamental aspect which Lina Bobardi, which was important for her, that was the the non-chronological display of the artworks. And now in the 2015 installation, all artworks are hanged very radically chronologically, so you can just see a painting from,
This is changing now, though. It's changing now. Like now they change the installation every, I can't remember I do a lot of work with Mastery now, so I know all the people working there, but I think they change it every month. They put 15 different works in and 15 works out, and they have contemporary works now as their contemporary collection. So what you're seeing is the classical first iteration. But if you went there today, you'd see a sculpture right where the Rembrandt is now, more or less, in the middle there, the Rembrandt portrait. You would see a sculpture by a young Black Brazilian artist. And so there's a real attempt to make the collection more dynamic in that respect. So I don't think the chronology is quite so strict anymore.
Okay.
Marie, I have a question for I wanted to understand, Mark, when you shared this work with David, what were the initial conversations you had about this work, and what transpired between the two of you in him also choosing this work for the Biennale? Could you share some of those, maybe some behind the scenes with us?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think we were having dinner. I know David quite well, and I think I've been in 2 or 3 shows of his. So I really can't remember. I mean, I think he asked me, "What are you working on?" or something like that, and I showed him this, and he went, "Oh wow, I love it," or something. Yeah, I'm sure I told him how I made it, but I can't remember precisely the conversation. And then he said, "Oh, can I show it in the show?" And then it turned out to be this show. Sorry, I don't remember.
That's okay. That's okay.
He may remember. He may remember. Is he in New York, or is he in London right now?
I think he's probably in New York, as far as I know. But yeah, I think he's.
Yes, he is in New York right now.
Yeah. Sorry, Marie, please continue.
Yeah, maybe Yasmin, or when you have another question. Otherwise, maybe we will pursue the.
That's a weird look just now. Look at that.
Or you have anything more to add, Mark?
No, just that odd moment when it looked like it was 3-dimensional, like here.
Yes.
Very odd, because I've never seen it with a freestanding image before. Anyway, no, I'm done, unless you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So we continue the visit of the exhibition, and we just, from the one museum in Sao Paulo, we enter like another museal space, we can say. And we just take a look on our left and see the works of Antonio Perez Rio.
And just letting our audience know that if they have any questions, they can put it in the chat box, and we'd be happy to take them forward to the artist or for Marie. Please do share your questions in the chat box.
I think now the internet here is hanging a bit.
Yeah.
You can't see an image either, right?
No, we can't. It's a black screen.
I'll try just another view.
Now we come closer.
Maybe I close some of them.
Maybe you can, yes, close some. Marie, maybe you can also close the 2 tabs, 2 more tabs.
Yeah.
Didn't help.
I'll refresh. See if that helps. Okay, so now we're back. Okay, we see the artworks by Antonio Perez Rio. And I will just start on the right, and I will just guide you once in a close-up view. Again. But already you can see a bit of them. And you see what is the main aspect which always returns in each frame. So we are seeing all paintings which are hanging in the Louvre in Paris. And Antonio Perez Rio, he was very interested in this museum since it is one of the main, or the mostly visited museum in the world, and also in the most visited touristic city in the world. And he was interested in how far the emergence of smartphones and smartphone cameras changed the perception of the visitor of the museums, and also the behavior of the visitors in the museums. So I will just quickly just make one brief overview slide here.
I distinctly remember this particular exhibition and this work because, of course, many of us got so fascinated in the sense that it was very important to take a photograph of this work on your smartphone and also get captured while doing that, you know. So this whole need to capture, whether it's art or whether it's capturing the photographer who is shooting another piece of work that has a smartphone in it, it was almost like a domino effect in a way that was happening.
It really invites us also to we are very familiar with this kind of movement to just take out the camera from the smartphone and
yes,
picture everything.
Absolutely.
I think if we compare it to your work, Mark, it's interesting because it's so obvious that when you try to understand and to capture an image with your smartphone, you really change the size and you change the quality of knowing this work. But what you did was to make it, or to produce a new form to find a way of to transport the feeling, how you move in this new environment, in this very avant-garde display. So I think it's really interesting to compare these tools and to see what is losing if you only use a smartphone by capturing the old images. Of course, this is a new layer because this is an artwork itself. But yes, I think it's interesting to think about this.
Maybe in addition now to what you said, Jasmine, I want to take a closer look at this picture. So I just slide over it. So you see, the series is called Masterpieces, and this is the title is Delictus bring to Brutus the bodies of his son. So what do we see here is we have a framed picture, and when we are our regard is directed through all these hands we see. So we see the first hand on the front holding the smartphone. We see directly in relation to it the hand on the background of the picture, which is really like it wants to seize this smartphone. And when we take just one look at the original, we see that it's just like a part of a bigger plane, like you just also mentioned, Jasmine. And which is really interesting in the pictures by Antonio Perez Rio is to find out all these small details, how he makes himself the composition of his own frames now, where he photographs the visitors photographing artworks, and where his own photographs become artworks or become he takes the whole habitus of the artworks themselves in, while he's also reproducing the frames, which are very golden. Now they don't come out as shiny as they are in the exhibition space, but you really can imagine yourself a very shiny, golden, almost kitsch, almost cheap looking, maybe a little bit too much of a frame around these alu debond photographs. So you can a bit seeing also that he is almost also like caricaturing. It's like a caricature of the way how we are behaving in front of these artworks with our smartphone in our hands. Or another example is here with the
selfie stick.
Yeah, the selfie stick, right? Which goes just which you can just follow into this word from the Oath of the Horace in this frame.
I made a bunch of films in the Louvre too, and one of the films I made goes through the galleries where the Davids are. So it ends up in the Picasso room. Sorry, in the Mona Lisa room. And of course, everybody there is doing selfies in the Mona Lisa room. So it's like they're picturing themselves in front of the Mona Lisa as a kind of evidence that they were there. So it's a slightly different effect that they want to be seen with a painting rather than to depict the painting itself. You see what I mean?
And you were filming the people.
Yeah, I was filming the space.
Yeah.
And then you see that when you get into, well, you've all been to the Louvre, when you go into the room where the Mona Lisa used to be. It's been since the Da Vinci show, it was all transformed. But you'll see everyone will be standing, with their back to the painting, photographing themselves. So it's a kind of interesting iconoclasm, because they're turning their back to the painting, which historically you turn your back to something when you didn't like it. But here they're turning their back in order so they can be seen with it. It's an interesting physical transformation of the body in relationship to the work.
Yeah, and Antonio Pellegrino, the artist who did these photographs, he published them in a book called Masterpieces, and there he also, since he's also doing creative writing, he also wrote texts about his observations during all his visits in the Louvre. He was visiting the Louvre during 4 years, several times, and it's also very interesting to have a look at his text in the book, where he also describes his observations quite similar to also those you have now described, which were motivating your film, Mark. But I profit also of your reference of showing the back to one picture. When we just go further, maybe this will also be the last artist we are getting to see today, because time seems to be running out. But maybe this one we still have time to. So this is a series by Claudia Angelmeier, which is called Works on Paper. And you don't need to be surprised, because even if you were standing in the exhibition hall, you will not see much more than you are seeing now. It is quite dazzling, because you are confronted with your gaze who does not see what he expects to see. I will zoom in closer. You also see reflections of the other pictures, which should not obviously be part of the picture. And I will just show you a little bit around. And maybe in order, you can already recognize maybe the format of this, or the original, the medium, which we see here. It's a very typical postcard frame, like the back side of the postcard. And I will just go to the homepage of Claudia Angelmeier herself, where we see the pictures without any reflections on them, and maybe we have a better look at them. So you see, she has been photographing postcards, the back sides of the postcards, and oversizing them. So they are really, really huge. You can see it's 110 centimeter high, so very, very big postcard. And the reason is because she took the original dimensions of the painting, she translated them onto her new photograph. And she was photographing while she was putting light on the back side, like placing them on an overhead projector, for instance, and taking a picture of it. So the front side of the picture showed through, and you can see here when you allow your eye to get accustomed to the white shades, you can see just like a woman here, naked woman kneeling. Oh, we can look at another one. Just here the worker by Venus, the toilet of Venus. So again, you really need to have a bit of time, but the Venus poster is so known to us all, so that you can recognize the image of the lady lying there on the Venus. And as you mentioned before, and that it was very strange seeing the visitors showing their back at the Mona Lisa. Also here, Claudia Angelmeier, she plays with this, the back, showing the back of people and showing the back of the postcard. So it's like she's she only chose naked women, which were shown from their back view. And then we maybe Yasmin, maybe you have also some thoughts which guided you when you saw these pictures in the real exhibition space in their full size.
Yeah. So you really, since you glance at the people who they can't look back. This is for sure, and I think it's a very feministic position that you have these nude persons, but they are on the back, or they shine only through the back of the postcard. And I mean, it's still strange that you have them on a postcard, so to say. So it's a double layer of the people that you, on the one hand, you observe people who can't look back, and then still it's a back of the back, so to say. So it's double layered. And I think it's really interesting that you have the distance, but because you have the back of the postcard, but also you come really closer because you want to see what it's what it is like. You want to dive in and get closer to the image, but you can't because the whole image only comes through when you have a certain distance. So it's here also a connection to Mark's work, I think, because you as a body in the exhibition space have to find your way to the art piece itself. So it's really like a very physique way to be with the artwork. So this is something you can't really transport in a digital tour. I think the whole show is full of, and especially this show is full of you making connection to the artworks in the display.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Yasmin. And also another thing which comes through while I just have a look back here, you can see also additional to this veiled view where you feel yourself confronted to your voyeurism because you want to see maybe more of it and you can't because it is desealed. You see other types of information standing on the backside of the postcard, and just like, for instance, here as an example, you see the name of the artist of the original painting, and you also see from which exhibition this postcard belongs to and when it was sold. And you can read here the name of an exhibition called Naked at the Städel Museum in Frankfurt. So which quite also seems like it was maybe quite a spectacular exhibition, as they really took also this affirmation of naked in order to make it the subject of the exhibition. And so it also reveals also asks the question why are we always seeing just these female nudes, and for whom are they made, and who sees them maybe in a different way? Maybe it's a difference whether me as a woman, have a look at them, or maybe it's a difference when a male visitor has a look at them. Mm-hmm. And it's this questioning of how we are aware of how we look at pictures and how they are presented to us in which medium. That's also like the same as also Antonio Perez Rio. He wanted to make us aware of how we are using this technology we have now at our hands, the smartphones, and make pictures every day. But how are we really relating to them, or how are we reflectively thinking on them? And this was actually a thought that you can pursue your visit of the exhibition, and you will see many more examples of how also the curator showed examples of how we need sometimes to reflect upon our look and ask ourselves question, if we see everything we need to see, or if we are observing enough and are asking enough questions also. So thank you for attending the visit. I think we need to stop right here because I would like to continue, but because there are many more works to see, but I think we need to
so much. So I just got a message that Eva Monika Zabrowski was here as well. I don't know if she's here already, is still here because I couldn't find her in the participant list, but maybe we can have one last quick look at her work, because it's, I think, one more aspect which is also really rounding the whole show, because it's her way to make us think of an artist's environment. So, Marie, do you want to say a little bit about around the background? So maybe this is only 2 more minutes, and then we stop the tour. But I think it's really nice since she was here, and I asked her via mail if she wants to talk, but I didn't get any answer. So, but maybe, yeah, we give her some time to, maybe she wants to say something, or we can quickly say something about this work.
So I will just quickly show you through here to have a first impression of it. So Eva Monika Zabrowski, she was in Bassano. All these photographs were taken in Bassano in Terevina in Italy. It's very close to Rome. And she was visiting the atelier, or one of the ateliers of Cy Twombly, and who no longer lives, and who's nobody any longer lives in this place, which is quite easily to be seen also because it seems quite abandoned and empty. But still, she took a lot of respect and patience in photographing very small details, like, for instance, also this view of this window and the wall and the crackles on the wall. Or small details like the mirror standing on the floor. And so we are in an artistic atelier, which, however, does no longer seem to be used artistically, and we cannot see any trace of any artistical work which has been done there. There are no paint splashes on the floor, there are no leftovers of any paintings or material which the artist maybe worked with. And I will very quickly show you just an example, like quite a different one, just in view of another, I don't know if it's the same atelier, the same house but it's another house in Italy for sure, where Cy Twombly also lived and worked. And you can see here one of his paintings, just in case you don't know who Cy Twombly was. He was painting, often in this kind of manner, in abstract expressionism. And you see the difference comparing this photograph, where you see maybe not a lot of personal details, but still you see paintings, you see a little bit of tissue, cloth, and books lying around, and here everything of these kind of details is vanished. So maybe the question we can ask is whether this really is a documenting also this artistical space, and if it is documenting it, how does it succeed in doing so? So what mainly, I think when you really have a look at all these photographs, one thing gets very clear is that all this atmosphere of the old Italian mansion with the mason blocks and also some relics of statues still standing there. It's all this atmosphere which was very important to Cy Twombly when he worked there himself, and which was for him also a lot of an inspirational material. And the photographer Eva Monika Sebrowski, she really took, it's very sensitive how she documented all these kinds of atmosphere in the building, even though we can see at any point any person living there or any Cy Twombly in action, for instance.
And she adds that Eva adds that she was taken by Twombly's son to the house in Bassano. So it's also, of course, it's a very personal way to enter a house like this when his son guides her through. So this might also be the very personal view we get now, because she was there with a close person to Cy Twombly, and it's a very subjective way of seeing the whole thing. And by the way, Marie, she just told me that the show, the image you were showing was another house in Rome. So yes, exactly. And I think, which all brings us maybe back to the show, is that here with Eva Monika Zebrowski's work, we have one more aspect about all artist photography, or all photography is art, that we get an inside view of this atelier, of the studio, but we all have to put so much imagination in it to make it as an artwork. And you really know, because it was Cy Twombly's work that which was staged there, that these images somehow get a new aura. So it's really interesting that our way of seeing things are influenced so much as well by knowing about them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Yasmin.
Mm-hmm.
Nicely explained. So maybe are there any more questions in the chat, or also maybe for the works we have seen before, because I never asked. I always hope that there would be some anyways.
I think in the chat there are no more questions asked. So maybe we stop here. We have 5 minutes more than expected, and I thank you so much, Marie Bach, for giving us this tour. Thank you so much, Mark Lewis, for being with us and showing around your work. And we are very curious to see more of your work. So check everybody out, his homepage, and stay updated. And thank you, Shuchi, for hosting this and having this wonderful conversation with us. And thanks to everybody. And if you want to attend other guided tours, the next one will be the day after tomorrow. It's in the Heidelberger Kunstverein. And yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Just 1 second. I have to go because I've got this Skype interview now.
Okay. Bye, Mark. And yes, bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye.